Today, we're diving into something that is, I think, incredibly practical for just about everyone: how to actually train your nervous system. We're going to break down how you can build real, measurable resilience without, and this is key, without burning out. So let's just start with the big question right up front. Can you really train your resilience, your capacity to handle stress, the same way you train a muscle in the gym? Well, the answer is a huge yes. And the parallels are actually way more direct than you might think. And what's so cool is how perfectly this analogy holds up. When you're in the gym, you're using things like high-intensity interval training, different heart rate zones, all to build strength while trying to avoid injury. Well, for your nervous system, the principles are pretty much identical. You use these cycles of stress and recovery to build up your emotional regulation and, crucially, avoid burnout. And this really all comes down to a universal biological rule. It doesn't matter if we're talking about your biceps, your cardiovascular endurance, or your ability to focus. All growth, and I mean all of it, happens through one single mechanism: repeated, recoverable stress. That word, recoverable, is everything. Progress isn't about just going all out all the time. It's about strategic stress followed by real dedicated recovery. So just like in fitness, we can think about this in terms of training zones. Let's start with the most important one, the one where all the good stuff happens, the green zone, or what we'll call the adaptive load zone. This is your sweet spot. So how do you know you're in this green zone? What does it actually feel like? Well, physically, yeah, your heart rate is up, but it feels stable, not chaotic. Your breathing is a little faster, but it's still got a rhythm to it. And in your mind, you feel this sense of focused effort, but there's no panic. You still feel like you have a choice, like you're in the driver's seat. Think of it like zone 2 cardio, that sustainable, productive stress where you can just go and go. This is where the magic happens. Okay, next up is the yellow zone, the threshold. Now, this is where things start to get a lot more intense. It can definitely be useful, but you gotta use it in very small, controlled doses. In this zone, you might start to notice your breathing gets shallow, you're clenching your jaw, maybe your neck and shoulders feel tight. Mentally, this powerful sense of urgency kicks in. Time might even feel like it's speeding up or slowing down, and your thinking gets really rigid. This is your high-intensity interval training. It's super powerful, but if you stay here for too long, you're absolutely risking pushing yourself into the danger zone. And that brings us to the red zone, overload. I want to be crystal clear about this. This is not the goal. This is injury territory. You do not build capacity here, period. When you're in overload, you either experience this total emotional flooding or sometimes the opposite, a complete shutdown. You get tunnel vision, you completely lose perspective, and you feel this overwhelming need to just escape the situation. And the real telltale sign? Recovery from the state takes hours, sometimes even days. This is the nervous system's version of chronic overtraining. It just breaks you down. It doesn't build you up. Okay, so this brings us to a major shift in how we think about this stuff. If pushing yourself into the red zone doesn't build resilience, then what does? Well, it means we need a totally new scorecard, one that isn't about how much you can tolerate, but about something else entirely. And here's the crucial point. This is the whole ballgame. True capacity, true resilience. It's not about gritting your teeth and just enduring more and more stress. It is measured by how quickly and how efficiently you can come back to a calm, centered state after the stressful thing is over. The comeback, that's the skill we're training. So let's just put a formal name on this, right? We can call it nervous system fitness. And it's really simple. It's the ability of your system to recover quickly and efficiently after it's been stressed out. That's it. That's the metric we should all be paying attention to. So how do you actually measure this for yourself? Well, look at your recovery curve. After something stressful, does it take you minutes to feel normal again? That's awesome. That's adaptive. Does it take hours? You were probably on the edge. Does it take days? That was overload. Also, just notice your breath. Does it start to deepen all on its own, or do you have to force it to calm down? And check your thinking. How quickly does your sense of humor or your curiosity or just your ability to see the bigger picture, how quickly does that come back online? Okay, let's make this super practical. We can take a really well-known productivity tool, the Pomodoro technique, and reframe it as the perfect workout for your nervous system. So, you probably know the classic method, right? You set a timer, you work with intense focus for 25 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break, and you just repeat that cycle. And you know what? It's a fantastic starting point because it forces you to practice these little cycles of stress and recovery. But now, we can make this even more powerful. Instead of being a slave to that rigid timer, let's start using your own internal cues. So you work until you feel your focus just start to fade, and you stop before that feeling of mental rigidity or that sense of urgency kicks in. Then you rest until you can actually feel your breath deepen and your attention widen out again. By doing this, you are training your nervous system based on your actual, real-time capacity. And the long-term payoff of training this way is profound. What you'll find is that your focus intervals, they just naturally start to get longer. Your recovery breaks become shorter and way more efficient. And your overall capacity to handle stress without tipping over into overload, it genuinely expands. So after all of this, what's the one simple thing to take away from all this? Well, it all boils down to one elegant, completely burnout-proof formula. Here it is. Stress followed by recovery leads to growth. That's it. That's the secret sauce. Burnout is simply what happens when you consistently skip that middle step. Resilience is what happens when you fiercely, fiercely protect it. And this applies to everything: your work, your workouts, your relationships, all of it. And that leaves us with one final and really crucial question. It's not about how much stress you can handle. It's about this. Knowing that recovery is where all the growth actually happens, how are you going to protect yours today?